This program does not provide medical advice. We assume no liability for the information provided on Mind Force Radio. Please consult your physician before beginning any exercise or nutrition program.
This is Roger LaPointe, and I have known Bob Whelan for many years at this point, and he is one of the most intense individuals you will ever meet. Go Mind Force Radio.
Direct from Mind Force Radio, this is Natural Strength Night with Maximum Bob. On Natural Strength Night, we don't talk about the other things Bob likes to talk about. Tonight, we only talk strength training. When I say strength training, I don't mean training like punk-ass goons in the muscle magazines who jacked up on juice, steroids, and PEDs. I mean natural strength. Strength built on good food, heavy weights, and no shortcuts. If you want to learn about real natural strength, weight training the right way, the old school way, stick around. Bob and his friends just might teach you something.
He's here, the host of Natural Strength Night, Maximum Bob Whelan.
My getting to know segment in the last podcast, when I was talking about Professor Attila, a lot of people liked it. I tried to make it funny with a few embellishments, and it was historically accurate, but after I listened to it, I wanted to make a few comments. Sandow did work as a janitor for Attila in the Brussels gym, that's a fact, but he probably did a lot more floor sweeping than he did toilet cleaning, because after thinking about it, they really didn't have the toilets back then like we have now. They had more like outhouses, so he was probably shoveling into the honey wagon than actually, cleaning toilets. So he probably was doing a lot more floor sweeping and shoveling, but he was still a janitor. So the next couple of things, I wanted to make sure, because even though I embellished a little bit, and I even said I was embellishing when I was doing it and made it funny, but I had my good buddy Osmo Keha listen to it, and I wanted him to give me any kind of input on it, and he thought it was funny, and he liked it. I just found out from Osmo, and I'm glad that I checked, that Sig Klein did inherit the gym, but he didn't meet Grace until after Attila died. Also, some of the original equipment from Attila is in Bill Pearl's barn, like I said, but not all of it. Sig Klein spread it out a little bit and gave some of it to a few other friends too. So tonight, our guest is Jim Duggan, and I've known Jim for 20 years or so. Jim is a captain in the New York City Fire Department. He's written many great articles for naturalstrength.com and the Dinosaur Files. He was a moderator on my discussion board, Physical Culture. And he also performed a few feats of strength at a few of my capital city strength clinics in Washington, D.C. He's competed for many years in powerlifting and strongman competitions, and he's won many of them too. In 2000, Jim went to York, Pennsylvania, and he won the Bob Hoffman Strength Challenge. Jim is one of the strongest drug-free guys you'll find, and he'll give you honest advice that works. Welcome back, Big Jim.
Hey, Bob. How are you? It's great to be here.
Pretty good. So, Big Jim, I got a few questions for you from our listeners. The first one is, who was your big inspiration, and who motivated you to get started in training?
When I was 12 years old, the 1976 Olympics, I actually watched it on television, and I saw the weightlifting for the first time, the different weight classes. I saw that, and around that time also, CBS used to show powerlifting on television. And a couple of years after that, they started showing the World's Strongest Man contest. So right around that time, I started to get interested in weightlifting, and I bugged my parents for a set of weights. And a bunch of us in the neighborhood. We all had weights in our house. We'd go to each other's house, and we would just try to have impromptu weightlifting contests and just try to outlift each other.
What brand was your first set of weights? Was it like a York 110-pound set or what?
It wasn't a York. I'm sorry to say it wasn't a York.
Let me guess. A Sears Ted Williams plastic set.
It was a plastic set. It wasn't a Ted Williams, but it was from Sears. It was plastic filled with sand or concrete, whatever they fill it up with. Yep. And that's what I started with.
Yeah, it all works.
It worked, and I joined my first gym was Bruno's Health Club in Levittown, New York, when I was around 19 years old. And
yeah, I was going to ask you later in the show about that, but since you mentioned Bruno now, because one of your questions that I'm going to be asking you was about your favorite gyms. But I remember on the physical culture board, you used to write a lot. You even had like anniversaries of remembering Bruno, and some of the articles you wrote on there were like tear-jerking. I could tell by the article. Didn't he die in a car accident or something? I can tell you had a very close relationship with him, and he ran a great gym. So go ahead and tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, I joined Bruno's in July of 1983. I just turned 19, and it was a small storefront gym in a strip mall, and the owner was Larry Bruno Licandro, and Larry opened up the place several years before, and he was a local. He competed in Olympic lifting and powerlifting, and he stopped. And the reason he stopped was he basically grew frustrated by the fact that there was no drug testing in what was going on locally on Long Island. But he ran his gym, and he was adamant against the use of steroids. If you used or advocated the use of steroids, you were asked to leave, or you weren't even allowed in the place. And
he's my kind of guy. I think he's great already.
Bobby, you and him would have hit it off right off the bat. You both had the same philosophy, and I mean, a lot of people do talk a good game about it, but they'll look the other way when somebody uses. But Larry actually had the guts to, if he thought you were using, he confronted you, and you were asked to leave. But the gym itself was kind of like a shrine to like York Barbell. Everything was York, and Larry would actually drive down to York with his 73 Pinto, loaded up to the gunnels with plates and bars and whatever, and drive back. And everything was York. There was no other brand of equipment in that gym. And there was, if you liked free weights, if you liked working out hard and heavy and on the basics, it was a great gym. And a bunch of us still get together. Guys like Tom Tedesco, Chris Newens, Bobby Saylor, Mike Doucette. We still get, about once a year, we get together and we relive the old days. We celebrate Larry. And Larry died in a car accident in January of 1995. He had long since sold the gym, but he had always kept, he worked at other gyms. And to this day, we still celebrate him. We drink a toast to him every year. And a lot of us still train the same way we did when we worked out at Bruno's.
Those were some of the best posts. You know how some posts really touch you to the core. Some of the posts on there about Bruno, because the guys you just mentioned, they were on the board too, and this thread was just filled with these unbelievable posts that I'll never forget. So I remembered the guy all the way like 10 years later, because I mean they were just some really touching posts. So he must have been a great guy.
Larry was a good friend and became my best friend. To this day, we still, like I said, we'll drink a toast to him every year when we go out to eat. And we try to get about 7 or 8 guys together. And some of them are older. I'm going to be 50 years old next month. Tommy Tedesco he's in his mid-50s. But we all still train. Tommy still does Olympic lifting. Chris Newens still does powerlifting contests. We still train the same way, and we still have some of some of Larry's expressions, so to speak. He hated guys who did cable work, right? Push downs. He would ridicule guys in the gym. These were paying members, and he'd ridicule guys for doing push downs. Guys who did curls, he was just doing curls for the girls, and he didn't like that. But if you trained, if you did squats, if you did deadlifts, if you did the basics, you were accepted, and Larry's in a circle. And we competed for many years. We had a team that competed for many years, and we would train on Sundays, Sunday afternoons, when nobody else would be in the gym. We'd be working out. We'd be training deads and squats for whatever upcoming contest would be.
Did you guys have a deadlift day where you all came in and deadlifted together?
Sometimes we did, but more than that, usually it was a squat day. Most of us guys squatted like twice a week. A lot of guys maybe deadlifted once a week, but usually Sundays I would do squats, benches, and deads on the same day, and other guys would usually do squats. But there was usually a day when we all, we weren't always like training partners, but we trained together. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Oh, it does. It's all how you feel. I mean, it's all your own psychology. Whatever works for you. I mean, that's why some people they overthink things. I mean, you have to think and plan out things, but sometimes people think too much and they worry too much, and they should just let their instincts take over and not worry so much about it, right? For me, when I was powerlifting, it seems like the deadlift for me was the one that took the most. It's probably the hardest lift. They're all hard, but I did better when I had a group of people with me yelling and screaming and egging me on. So we'd usually get a bunch of us and meet like one day a week and would all deadlift. We just deadlifted once a week, and when you got 4 or 5 guys yelling and screaming, it just makes you do a lot better, So it was fun though.
It does help. And having a group of guys there, it motivated you, it inspired you, and what we would do afterwards, or even if we trained during the week, at night after work, we'd go out to eat. We'd go out to a local diner or the Friendlies, and 4, 5, 6 of us, we'd go out and we'd eat afterwards. And,
we did that too. It was awesome.
and when we competed, part of the best part of competing was, doing your best, and hopefully, you would set PRs and do well for yourself. We'd go out to eat afterwards. We'd go to a nice restaurant on the way home, and it was a lot of fun. And it was a special time with a special bunch of guys. And like I said, we're all getting older, but we still try to keep in touch. We still train the same way, and we still have the same basic philosophy that we did, 30 years ago.
You're still in puberty, Jim.
Yeah, a lot of people say I don't act my age, so I guess.
I'm just joking because I'm going to be 60 this year. Can you believe it? It's like I can't believe it. I feel like I'm 40. Before the show, me and Jim were talking before we went on the air, and I said, Jim, can you believe I've known you almost 20 years? And then Jim said, 18 years exactly on July 20th. And I said, how do you remember that? Jim, share with the audience what you just told me.
The reason it's not because I have like a memory like Mary Lou Henner, who can remember stuff from like 40 years ago. July 20th, it was a Saturday, and I remembered because it was my birthday, and Drew had been planning this for a while, and it just fell on my birthday, and we drove in, me, Drew, Howard Menke, and we met up with you, and then the 4 of us went to Peter Lugers, and it was also the first time I'd ever been to Peter Lugers. I'd read about it, I'd heard about it, I had friends who had eaten there, so it was the first time I'd ever eaten there. And so it was memorable for me. It was my birthday, the 4 of us together, my first trip to Peter Lugers. And also, too, my father, who was a chief in Williamsburg section of Brooklyn, where Lugers is located, stopped by. He was working, and he stopped by to wish me a happy birthday. The 4 of us sat down. We ate. The maitre d' and the waiter were surprised that we all ate steak for 2. We all ate everything on our plate. And I think I was the smallest guy there, Bob. I don't know. Was I?
I don't think so. I think you're bigger than me.
Howard and Drew kind of dwarfed us, and I have a feeling if they would have put like steak for 3 or 4 in front of Drew, I think he would have finished it. Not only was he tremendously strong, he was a good eater too.
I think Dr. Ken actually made this up. I think I got this from Dr. Ken, but he said when you're eating at the table with Drew, you got to watch your hands because you might get a fork stuck in it. Because I mean, we had to not eat the bread. For me, eating steak for 2, that was about what was that, 50 or 60 ounces of steak? I mean, that was a lot. It was because each one was huge. That's why, because in Peter Lugers, you just buy steak for 1, steak for 2. You get steak and that's it. And it's for 1, for 2, whatever. Well, we all got steak, so we all get double steaks. So he thought, oh, you get people coming? No, it's just us. So we had like 8 steaks for 4 people, and we all ate it. And then afterwards, he's going, it's been a long time since 4 guys came in here and all finished steak for 2. Remember that?
I remember that. Yeah. And then
That was fun.
Then you wrote a good article about it, in Training and Eating in New York City or something like that. And,
Oh yeah, that's one of my favorite articles ever. And yeah, that was great. That was a great time. I forgot that it was your birthday. That's why it surprised me that was the first time I met you. You remembered the exact date. Anyways, the next question, Jim, and I know you're going to love talking about this because we've talked about this before. The sorry state of powerlifting today, especially with the equipment and the gear and the triple ply bench shirts that can make a 290 bencher, according to Dick Connor. You probably heard his podcast, but Dick Connor says today a 290 bencher can bench 500 because of the gear and the drugs. So, what do you think today of the sorry state of powerlifting with the gear and the drugs?
Well, Bob, that's you hit the nail right on the head. The sorry state of powerlifting. It's a shame because it was a very good sport. It was a sport in which you can demonstrate and test your strength. Now it's really more a matter of what kind of gear that you're wearing, whether it be the super triple denim bench shirt or the squat suits or whatever other crapola they have nowadays. But it used to be a good way of training for something, achieving a goal, and testing your strength. Now it's just who has better equipment. And it's funny that you mentioned that with Dick. I remember training when I was in Iron Island. It had to be like 16 years ago or something like that. There was a bench meet coming up, and I remember it was the week leading up to the bench meet was on a Sunday. There was a lifter there. He was training, didn't have a shirt on, and he was, doing heavy singles. He got buried, and I mean buried with 365. He put 365 on the bar. He got buried with it. It was just stuck on his chest, stuck at ground zero, would not budge. And he tried it like 2 or 3 times, would not move. 5 days later, I think it was 5 days later, at the meet, he's competing. He's got his whole entourage of guys putting his suit on, his shirt, and his super denim shirt on. What do you think he lifted at the meet? He did 512. I think like
Unbelievable.
511 or 512. He just missed, I think, like 522 or whatever it was, but he benched over 5. And it went up easy with the shirt. So 150 pounds stronger in 5 days, or the equipment had a lot to do with it.
Oh, yeah, and the drugs. But did you hear the podcast with Dick Connor when he talked about that?
I didn't hear it, but I'm going to go back and listen to it.
It was like a month ago or so, maybe a little longer. But Dick said 290 or 295. I think it was under 300. It was like either 290 or 295. Bencher that's natural, wearing a wrestling singlet. If they go on drugs and put on this equipment, they can bench over 500. So that's unbelievable. But that's the sorry state we're in right now.
My best bench was made without a shirt.
What was your best bench, Jim?
My best comp was 505.
That's phenomenal for drug-free, for natural and without gear. That's unbelievable.
I think another thing about with the sport is the judging. The last meet I went to was a few years ago. Chris Newens, Bruno, remember Bruno's, was competing in Masters, and we go to this meet. It was on Long Island, and the judging was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, half squats were being passed, and Chris was a very dyed-in-the-wool, strict, squatter, and he trained the way we at Bruno's. We always sunk our squats. And the judge went up to him and said, "You're squatting too deep." Who ever heard of anything like that? That's ridiculous. But if you would have seen some of these lifts that were passed, it was a joke. I mean, the guys are doing half squats and getting them passed with 3 white lights. And
right.
You're doing them, you're not doing anybody any favors by passing bogus lifts. You're just doing them a tremendous disservice, because if they ever do enter a legit judged meet, they're going to bomb. They're going to fail.
Right.
But it seems to be the norm nowadays. No, I haven't competed in a while, and part of the reason was the gear, and also too, a lot of in New York State they really didn't have. There used to be a couple of organizations where they did have drug testing. Maybe it wasn't the most consistent or the most reliable, but as they faded away, I didn't really have the desire to, one, wear the gear, and two, compete against guys who you knew were cheating their way in.
We'll be back with more right after this.
This segment brought to you by VitalNutritionStore.com. Did you know that more than 7 million Americans suffer from coronary heart disease, the most common form of heart disease? Regardless of your age or condition, adding Cardio for Life to your daily regime will dramatically improve your cardiovascular condition. Cardio for Life has been the top-selling L-arginine product in the marketplace now for more than 3 years. It is also the top-selling product at VitalNutritionStore.com. Formulated by Dr. Harry Elwart, the best-selling author of Let's Stop the #1 Killer of Americans Today, Dr. Harry believes together we can prevent and reverse heart disease. Cardio for Life comes in 3 wonderful flavors: orange, peach, and grape, and is gluten-free, sugar-free, and sodium-free. Please see our complete line of natural products at VitalNutritionStore.com. That's VITAL Nutritionstore.com.
Randy Roach shocked the world with the release of his first volume of Muscle, Smoke, and Mirrors several years ago. It was a masterpiece of over 500 pages with such in-depth research and detail that it was not only surprising, but shocking and mind-blowing. It was truly one of the best Iron Game history books ever written. He followed that with Volume 2, another epic book with over 700 pages of equal depth and detail. All serious Iron Game fans need to have these books. Please visit Randy's website at randyroach.ca. That's RANDYROACH.ca.
Listen to how Iron Game legend and the Iron Master editor Osmo Kehaw describes the book Supernatural Strength. Have you ever wondered how much real-world experience authors have when they write books about weight training? Who is that person behind the computer? What do they really know about the Iron Game? If you picked up this book, Supernatural Strength, you have definitely come to the right place. The author, Bob Whelan, has spent several decades in the Iron Game trenches training himself, competing and coaching in powerlifting, earning academic credentials too numerous to mention, and thousands of hours of training and instructing athletes and trainees of all levels at his Washington, D.C. gym since 1990. He's not only devoted his life to motivating and pushing people to heights they have never been to, but elevating the trainees' understanding why certain methods work better than others. Bob is one of the most respected and revered trainers in the business today. This book is sure to surprise and amaze you at the same time. Order now at supernaturalstrength.com. That's supernaturalstrength.com.
Don't you think it would be so much easier getting into shape if you had a personal coach? Just like all the celebrities do. Well, now you can. Bob Whelan of WebStrengthCoach.com wants to get you out of your rut and coach you to success. He's dedicated to helping you achieve your strength and fitness goals through your hard work and his expert guidance. Bob will help you with strength training, muscle building, fitness, nutrition, and motivation. He'll make sure you achieve your maximum physical potential. You can get one-on-one training with Bob through his website, WebStrengthCoach.com. He will develop a personalized program tailored to your individual needs. A program right for you. Bob will give you feedback after every workout. This is old school fitness and nutrition. No fads and no gimmicks. Bob will use proven natural techniques to make sure you are satisfied. So visit WebStrengthCoach.com today and let Bob help you reach your best self. WebStrengthCoach.com.
Do you enjoy history without social engineering? Reading about our founding fathers? Economics from a capitalist perspective? Wisdom from modern patriots? Welcome to UncleSamBooks.com, where virtues like rugged individualism, hard work, and the American dream dominate. UncleSamBooks.com. Great books for homeschooling. UncleSamBooks.com.
If you want to become as strong and muscular as possible with health in mind, and without lowering yourself to using steroids, the best advice can be found in the classic strongman books of long ago. These are the best books ever written on the subjects of strength training, weightlifting, strongman training, Iron Game history, and old-time physical culture. Many of them can still be found at physicalculturebooks.com. There you will find good, honest, time-tested wisdom from the great old-time strongmen. to maximize your natural muscular and strength potential. Please visit physicalculturebooks.com.
Listen to Ken Manny, head strength and conditioning coach at Michigan State University, describe the book Iron Nation. A masterpiece text on some of the most intriguing and compelling personal stories, Iron Game history, and gut-wrenching training routines ever put to paper. If you truly love hard training without all the frills of pomp and circumstance so common today, you will love Iron Nation. Written by lifters for lifters. If you love weight training, you will love Iron Nation. Order now at ironnation.com. That's IRON Nation.com.
If you would like to promote your business on Mindforce Radio, we would love to hear from you. Please let us know if you are interested in a 30 or 60-second voice commercial or a banner website ad. Please contact Bob using the contact information provided on mindforceradio.com.
You're listening to Natural Strength Night on Mindforce Radio.
Even a lot of the so-called natural contests, they're still cheating. It's a real problem. I mean, I'd like to see an organization do blood testing and polygraph. Invent some new kind of test, like some kind of DNA test to prove if you're a lifetime or not. Because, you know, even if you did steroids for a long time, then you quit, you still get a benefit from that. Like, you know, a lot of guys, they use steroids all the time, you know, their whole life, and then when they get older, they stop using. Then they act like they're natural. Well, you're not natural. You still got a lot of, you know, you get some permanent gains from that. Even though you might have, when I say gains, I'm only talking about numbers. I'm not talking about health. You know, you could have screwed up your body, but I'm saying you got permanent strength gains from that too. You don't just lose it all when you go off of it, you know?
Oh, no.
So,
I remember there was a time, it's like a long time, about over 20 years ago, I entered the bench press meet up in the Bronx, and one of the competitors was a professional wrestler. I'm not going to mention his name, but he was a WWF wrestler. And, you know, my friend who was running the meet, he told me, he goes, it's a drug-free meet, you know. Are you drug-free? And his answer was, yeah, I've been drug-free for a month. So I'm clean for a month. That was his thing. So, and the guy was barely literate, he could barely speak, but they let him lift as a guest, just to, you know, for entertainment value. And he pushed up, I think, like 530, touch and go. He pushed up 530. But the funniest thing, you know, are you clean? Yeah, I've been clean for a month. So, so kind of like what you said, you know. Yeah, you stopped taking a month ago. You still have some carryover effect from, you know, from the drugs. So.
Yeah, well, you still have some permanent carryover too. If you use for 10 years and then you clean for 10 years, well, you still have some permanent gain from that, permanent strength. Jim, talk a little more about how important strength training is for your profession as a firefighter.
I think it's probably one of the most important things. You know, aside from just, you know, learning your job, but being in shape, being strong, I think it's tremendously important. No question about it. It's kind of like you know, when you're strength training for a sport, you want to make yourself stronger and less prone to injury. Well, with you know, being a fireman or a firefighter, there is no off season. You're training and you're competing. You're performing every time you go to work. So you have to be, you know, trained. You have to be in condition. And it's not just so much, you know, like training for powerlifting, but endurance, cardio, fitness. But strength training, there's no substitute for strength. You have to be strong. Just wearing the gear, climbing, moving, hauling, you know, the equipment in addition to what you're wearing. You know, you have to be strong, and you have to train to, you know, for strength and health. And you're not going to do it with curls and push downs and some other exercises. You have to train heavy, and you have to train your back. You have to do deadlifts. You have to do squats. You have to train your neck. I think that's an area that most people neglect. That's important. Your grip. Moving a 2.5-inch hose, right, requires hand strength, grip strength. So it's very important. And over the last 20 years, I think people have realized the importance of strength training. And like I said, not just you become a strength athlete, but strength endurance. Developing your entire body.
Firefighters now are considered tactical athletes. I think we talked about this before, but in the strength and conditioning field now, they have a whole new path, of study, and they're called tactical athletes, and that's police, firefighters, and combat soldiers. And they are, the physical demands that they do are just as athletic as athletes. Look at a firefighter. You got to wear all that gear, plus the Scott Air Pack, plus carrying somebody on top of all that, up and down a ladder. That's a lot more athletic than playing baseball.
Yeah. Oh, it certainly. I wish we got paid like ball players did, but it's very strange. And when you do it, when it's 90 degrees out, it makes it even that more challenging. But right. Tactical athlete. I remember you mentioning that like a month ago.
Right.
It's a very accurate description, and there's been a lot of research. Thankfully, OSHA and Dave put a lot of research into the importance of staying fit, staying strong, and that's one of the things that's come out of it is that nowadays firemen are more aware of their health. I remember as a kid, my father would take me to the fire station. Almost everybody smoked.
Right.
And a typical meal for dinner would be like hamburgers and French fries or something like that. Now guys eat healthier. For the most part, and it's only to our benefit because your body is under so much strain, so much stress, with all that gear and everything else. When you're, responding to something, right? The stronger that you can make your body, the more injury-proof you can make your body, right? You'll have a better chance of walking away and not getting hurt, or developing a long-term injury that might stay with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I think I told you, Jim, that I was a firefighter in the Air Force for 8 years. That was my job. I was a crash firefighter and an EMT. I loved it, but that's one of the things that I didn't like. I was ahead of my time, just like you said, going in the station when your father was a firefighter. That's what it was like when I was there. I think one of the reasons I didn't stick with it because I was inhaling smoke all day, cigarette smoke. It's like almost every firefighter in the fire station smoked, and you're with these guys all day. I couldn't wait to get the hell out of there. If I was a firefighter now, I might have stayed with it. If I was, they're eating healthy, they got gyms, they're working out. It's great. You're like athletes now.
Yeah, that's a very good description. Yeah, and. It's guys see the importance of it, and even now where I'm working now, I'm working in Engine 231 in Brownsville, and some of the guys there, they actually from every time they come back from a run, they do like 20, 30 push-ups. They have dumbbells on the apparatus floor, and they'll go through a push-up workout every time they have a response. And if you're going out the door 10, 15, 20 times during a 24-hour period, those push-ups add up. But, these guys are very dedicated and they keep themselves in good shape.
Who were some of your favorite Iron Game figures from the past?
I liked, and I think you're going to agree with me on this one. I always liked, John Grimmick from York. I only got to meet him once, and it was right before he passed away at the Association of Old-Time Barbell and Strongmen reunion dinners.
Was that the dinner I was with you with Drew?
I think it was the year before. It was
okay.
This was in '98, and I remember getting there late. It was a ton of traffic. We got there late. We sat down. We enjoyed the meal and all. And afterwards, you want to get and I'm not a big autograph guy. I only have maybe a handful of autographs. But I wanted to get his autograph because the year before, he couldn't make it. I think he had that's when he had his hips replaced. So he was back that year. You know what? I want to get his autograph. And he waited. There was a ton of people, and the guy was still, sharp, alert, very friendly. And I got his autograph. And then, maybe a month later or so, I read in the magazines he passed away. Also, too, Bruno from Bruno's. Actually, he worked at York for a while back in the 70s. Got to meet Grimmick. He said he was friendly, down to earth, approachable, and a great guy. Tommy Tedesco from Bruno's. Actually, Tommy was a journalism major. He actually wrote his senior thesis on the York magazines. And he spent the weekend at York, and he met with Hoffman and Grimmick and the York gang. And like I said, Grimmick was a favorite of mine. Bruno Sammartino, another favorite of mine. And I got to know Bruno from Bruno's, because that's Larry he gave himself the nickname of Bruno after Bruno Sammartino. I actually got to meet Bruno as well. Bruno Sammartino was at the reunion dinner, I think, in 2000. Another great guy, brutally strong, great wrestler, very strong stance against steroids.
Yeah, you can tell the difference when you look at those wrestlers from the 70s and then compare them to the guys now. They're like different species.
Yeah, it's a different species entirely. Well put. There's another name I like and I admire was Hermann Gerner, the German lifter from the 1920s.
Right.
Tremendous. I think he did a one-arm deadlift with 700 pounds.
What to you is more impressive, a 400-pound bench press or a 300-pound standing press?
No question, a 300-pound standing press. I think.
Yeah, I agree.
That's impressive.
These are questions from readers here.
I tell you what, I think a 300-pound standing press. Yeah, just from my own personal experience, the most I ever pressed overhead was 305. And I did
great.
it once. It was hard, and I trained long for it. So I know how hard it is, and I think that's much more impressive.
And was Bruno's gym the favorite gym you've ever trained in?
I like Bruno's. It was the first gym I ever joined. But I also thought Iron Island, Dr. Ken's Iron Island. I thought that was probably the best gym I ever worked out in. Just because the way it was run, everything about it, the equipment was top notch. The staff, everybody the place was immaculate. The equipment was top notch. The people who trained there were good people. So that was probably the best in terms of equipment, staff, people. That was probably the best place I ever trained at.
Ralph was a funny guy, wasn't he? Ralph Royola. I remember him. I met him a couple of times. He was a real funny guy.
Oh, Ralph was a very funny guy, very nice man. I like Ralph. I like Dr. Ken. I had met him at the gym. I had read about him. I knew of him, but until I joined Iron Island, I'd never met him. Very impressive. I mean, probably one of the most knowledgeable people in terms of training information that's out there. I mean, he still writes for Milo and other publications, and between Dr. Ken and Ralph, you had so much knowledge, so much experience. I mean, if you couldn't learn from those two people, then you weren't going to learn from anybody. The first time I went there, he had these welded I-beams with handles on it. He had the weighted torpedoes. He had the anvils, and in addition to tons of York weights, he had bumper plates for the Olympic lifters. He had numerous platforms. So if you were a serious lifter, you had equipment there just for you. If you were an athlete, if you were a college athlete training for a sport, which he had over there, he had enough hammer strength machines. You had something there for you. A week, or just a person looking to get into shape or get stronger, or just maybe drop a few pounds. And everybody was treated the same. You could be just somebody off the street, and you got the same attention as some of the world-class athletes that trained there. And there were some great athletes that trained there. That's when I met Drew, and I met Drew at Dr. Ken's. He was wearing a Bengals T-shirt. I thought Drew was a football player. He was just this big, friendly guy. and tall. He was about 6'4", wide as barn door. The human wall, as we call him, right? And
right.
I thought he was a football player. I'm trying to look at him. I'm trying to recognize. All right, I figured he was like an offensive lineman. All right, who is he? Who is this guy? And they just, he was one of the guys that worked out with Dr. Ken. But I thought he was a football. I thought he played for the Bengals. Then I met him, and Drew's, he's a heck of a nice guy. He was down to earth and friendly. And then I realized, he'd been training with Dr. Ken for a long time. But like I said, he was wearing a Bengals T-shirt, and I thought he was one of the offensive linemen, like Anthony Munoz and some of those other guys. You just figured, all right,
he probably got it from Kim Wood because, got it from Ken, who got it from Kim Wood because he was the Bengals strength coach back then.
Yeah, it's probably that's where he got it from. But like I said, I thought he played pro ball, and anyone who's ever seen Drew, the size of him, probably think the same thing.
Yeah, what advice would you give a young athlete thinking of using steroids?
Just say no. How about that?
That's a good answer.
Back in the '80s, when I guess when it was a drug problem, not steroids, but serious recreational drugs. That was the motto that the government put out. Just say no. And people laughed at it, whatever. But the people who laughed at it were the ones who didn't have the guts to actually say no. Just say no and stay away from it. Avoid it. It's not worth the problems it's going to create for you down the road. And if you take your time and just approach it slowly and progressively and not lose, keep your eye on the prize. Don't let, minor setbacks or a couple of bad workouts, deter you. If you just stay focused, train hard consistently, and progressively, you'll get there.
Well, Big Jim, thank you so much for being back on the show, and you always give great information, and I'm sure I'll see you back here soon.
Bob, I really had a great time. I enjoyed it, and I thank you very much.
Don't be a flamingo, you have to do your squats. Don't be a flamingo, real lifters work their legs.
That's going to do it for this edition of Natural Strength Night on mindforceradio.com. Please bookmark that website, mindforceradio.com. Bob is always looking for new writers for naturalstrength.com who are old school, hardcore, write with passion, and have a strong anti-steroid stance. He also wants your training questions so they can be answered on the show. Please send your articles and training questions to Bob at mindforceradio@earthlink.net. Thanks for listening. See you next time.